Welcome back, everybody, to Prime Cuts. Pastor Shane here, Pastor John to my left.
Hello.
Maybe you're right, I suppose. And we're going to talk about today the issue of forgiveness and reconciliation and things that Pastor Noah brought up in the sermon on Sunday when he got into the passage on anger from the Sermon on the Mount. So as we try to do our custom, we're going to read that passage just to kind of get us going. So John has that ready to read. I don't think he read the entire anger. I think he stopped short.
I think he stopped at 24.
Yeah. So go ahead and just read the ones he dealt with.
Sure.
And let's go.
Yeah. So this is Matthew 5:21. He says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift."
All right. So that was the passage. Now, again, we don't like to re-preach what Noah preached.
No, yeah.
You should go listen to that yourself. But we do want to take off on a few of the things that he brought up in the sermon. And one of them is the issue of forgiveness and reconciliation. So let's just jump into it, because we don't want this to be another hour and a half long episode. Not that there was anything wrong with anything we said or did in that episode, but we want to be respectful of people's time and our time. So, what is reconciliation, John?
Yeah, I think reconciliation has implications just like mercy. So why would you need mercy unless there was judgment, right? It's always in context. It doesn't stand on its own. So reconciliation means literally to bring back together. So that means that there is two parties that are apart in some way, and relationally. So there's something interfering the ability of the two people or two parties being welcoming to each other, being on good terms with each other. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I this may be an older word.
You're older.
But when one says that they make conciliatory efforts, or their actions were conciliatory, it just basically means friendly.
Yeah.
So it's essentially refriending.
Yeah.
If you want to defriend on Facebook,
right.
I mean,
which implies you are together.
To use that, that phraseology. This is the reconciliation is the act of refriending.
Yes.
In many ways.
Right.
Now we're going to get into some of the more finer aspects of that, and maybe address some situations where that may not be possible. Yeah. Okay. Or at least, well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so reconciliation is exactly what you said. It's this. There's odds between two parties who were once friends.
Together, yeah. You don't reconcile with strangers.
Right. We don't reconcile strangers. Well, except in God's case.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll get to that.
But we'll get to that. But even in that, in the grandest sense of it, God is our creator. So there is the foundation of a relationship present.
Right.
Okay. Even for those who don't know God, there's a relationship present, but it is a relationship of a rebel to its creator.
Right.
His or her creator. So I think we're still in balance to say that. You don't. Anyways. So reconciliation, and what is the relationship to forgiveness? Or let's just maybe define forgiveness quickly. Because I mean, you don't talk one without the other.
Yeah.
Okay. Forgiveness is what? What does it mean to forgive someone?
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about forgiveness, I would think the prime example would be God and his forgiveness of us and our sins. So, I mean, in that case, we have disobeyed his authority, right? He told us to do something. We said, no way, I'm doing it my way. And so we are rebels. That's going to look different in different situations. I think it's not so much that I disobeyed you, but I did hurt you in a certain way. But when I think of forgiveness, I think of God. Yet while we are still sinners, Christ died for us, and there's forgiveness offered through that, even though there was hardships between the two people. You answer this.
Well, actually, I cheated and I got some help to answer this question.
Yeah, that's great.
But I'll give you. I mean, my personal definition is very similar. Okay, there's been an offense.
Yeah,
and to first of all, to seek forgiveness is to go to a person and say, I was wrong, and will you forgive me?
Right.
But
you're repenting.
Yeah. So there's the seeker of forgiveness.
Yeah.
But then there's the dispenser of forgiveness. So the one who's being asked for forgiveness, and that's actually where I kind of want to land, because God, the Lord gave us a parable in Matthew chapter 18 that demonstrates the way that He forgives. And I'm not going to read the whole parable. But if you go to the parable of the unforgiving servant, it's Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 23. It says this: "Therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king." Wait, let me give some context. This is right after Peter said, "How many times must I forgive?" Okay. Then Jesus gives this parable. So let me start again, verse 23. "Therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything.' Out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave the debt." I'm going to stop there. There's more to the parable, but for what's pertinent to what we're talking, germane to this is we're talking about the action of the person that's dispensing forgiveness, that's giving forgiveness.
Yeah.
Now I must confess, this is not original to me. I got this from a book called Forgive. So I think it's the last book Tim Keller wrote before he passed away. But I started reading that book, and I was just struck by how he unpacked this part of this parable. So first of all, forgiveness means that you are absorbing the cost of the offense. Okay, so now that has a very monetary feel to it, but it has an emotional feel to it too. So, like John, if you wronged me, and I would be just and right to seek, restitution from you. Okay, whether that's an emotional or financial or whatever.
Yeah.
If I forgive you, then what I'm doing is I'm absorbing that loss to myself. Okay.
Yeah. It could be monetarily.
So in other words, I can't forgive you and at the same time expect you to pay me back.
Yes.
Or to repair the emotional damage
one or the other.
or whatever. You can't have both, because forgiveness is you can't earn forgiveness. Okay. Forgiveness is never a payment.
Yeah.
It's a release of
payment.
debt.
Yeah.
So if I forgive you, I can never expect you to pay me back.
Right. If you are holding forgiveness from me, if I've wronged you, the way you might get paid is seeing me just wallow.
Yes.
And be tormented over our broken relationship that I have committed against you, and you hold the keys to my forgiveness, and you're getting a bang out of me just crying every night and please let me come back.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good illustration. Yeah. No, that would be if I chose not to forgive.
Correct.
That would that's not what I would do for real if I wanted to.
But that's what people do.
Yes.
And they get satisfaction out of someone just squirm for years.
Right. So forgiveness then is a kind of voluntary suffering. Now, these are Keller's words.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, this is not scripture. We're talking about words from a pastor that we respect, et cetera, et cetera.
Some wisdom.
But some good wisdom. So forgiveness is a kind of voluntary suffering. So what he did with this parable is he broke it down And he said there's 4 things that happen in this parable. The first thing is that the trespass was named. It was named truthfully, and it was named as a wrong and punishable offense. Okay, so that's what happened when the king brought the indebted servant before him and said, well, here's what's going to happen. You owe me money, so I'm going to sell your family and all your possessions and get paid.
Yeah.
Okay, so the offense was named, and it was named truthfully, and the cost was named.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing is that you identify with the perpetrator as a fellow sinner. Okay, so now this is obviously in the parable a king and a servant, but what you have going on there is pity. Okay, it says that he took pity on him. So in some ways, something in that king's heart, he identified with him. Okay, he had mercy and pity on him. So what that means for us, because few of us are some super wealthy, monarch, and versus a peasant. Usually it's equals. Okay, so the way we have pity is we relate to one another as fellow sinners. We're in the same.
Yeah.
We're in the same category. Okay. The third thing is release the wrongdoer from liability and absorb the loss yourself. So that's exactly what the king did. He said the debt is forgiven.
Right.
I'll just take the loss.
He's out of that money now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never going to get that money back.
Right.
And he's okay with it.
Yeah.
He freely releases the servant to return to your life. I'm not going to place any demands on you. I'll take the loss.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fourth thing is there's a restoration of the relationship here. So in the parable, you've got a king and his servant.
Yeah.
And up until this point, the servant had been a free citizen underneath the king's rule. But because he committed an offense, the nature of that relationship changed. So now you've got a king and a criminal, okay, or a king and a debtor of sorts, okay. Maybe criminal is a strong word, but in forgiving him, that citizen was released now to return to, someone who's right in the eyes of the law,
Right.
Who has no debts with the king. He's just an average citizen now to his king as it was before. So the way that works itself out in our relationships is it's a restoration of the relationship to the status that there was before the offense.
Right.
Okay. And which is where reconciliation comes into the discussion.
Yeah.
So that is probably one of my favorite
That's good.
definitions, and like going to the scripture and working out what that looks like in terms of what it means to forgive someone. To be on the end of, to be on the side of things where you were the one who was offended.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you to then forgive the person who offended you? And I thought it was excellent.
That is good.
Keller brought some good wisdom to that.
That's really good.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
I mean, it just makes me think of God, who no one hates sin more than God. Like, it just can't be done. No one's offended by it more than him. And he valued that relationship so much, he sent his son, same essence as he is, still fully God, fully man. You might say truly God, truly man, right? And they didn't even deserve that. And so he absorbed the cost on his own son. And we are to imitate that, because I think the rest of that, doesn't he? He's not grateful.
Oh yeah, the rest of the rest of the parable, he goes out and
does the opposite.
Tries to choke to death somebody owes him money. Which, can I say this?
Please do. Yeah.
In some ways, I get it.
Oh sure, yeah.
Like all that angst and stress.
Yeah.
Like people owed him money. He couldn't pay the king. He gets released from it, I mean, I kind of get
I don't
the
be in that
frustration
that
he would have with whoever this was, best friend or whatever.
Right.
Not really a best friend.
Yeah.
But so, but the point of that, the rest of that, is that he didn't forgive as he was forgiven.
You're right.
Which is super important.
Yeah.
We cannot. Keller goes on to say that if you omit any one of these steps from your forgiving process, you're not actually exercising biblical forgiveness.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because that's how God has forgiven us.
Yeah.
And then we're supposed to forgive as we have been forgiven.
Right.
So it's actually really clear when you look at it, when you see how the Bible spells this out. It's not always easy to practice.
Yeah. Because I think some people, it's easier for them to forgive than others. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Some people have a more agreeable disposition.
Yeah, just their
I
makeup.
got to take a time out. Our timer went to sleep. Some people just have a more agreeable disposition. I mean, that happens. And I don't know. I think maybe that's more at the base of it than anything.
Right.
Now, sometimes it's the nature of the offense. Okay. You know, if somebody brought harm to my kids or my wife, that's going to be a little harder.
Sure, yeah.
And look, I just immediately swung to an extreme.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like dealing in extremes because extreme situations have extreme responses.
Yeah.
But everyday run-of-the-mill offenses, you know, I heard you said something behind my back, or you know, you cut me off in traffic, or whatever. You know, those things come down to, in a lot of ways, I think, just personality. Some people can just let it roll off.
Yeah.
Their back.
Some people are
than
offended
others.
over every single little thing on their way to work, on their way to the bank.
Yeah. But it's such a complicated thing because a lot of those personality rubs and issues are not born into us by nature. We learn them. You know, it's like the nature versus nurture argument. I mean, I people who go without, for instance, my parents, who were, you know, biologically my grandparents, but they grew up in the Depression, and that formed a lot about you know, how they made decisions, about the way they processed, you know, hurts. And I mean really it did. I mean, they bought things in bulk. We're never going to run out of laundry detergent or peanut butter or anything because they buy it in 5-gallon tubs, you know. And so it's, although I put the peanut butter thing to the test.
Did you?
When I was a kid. So but it's I think so. I think those things come into play.
Yeah, a part of me thinks that is a personality thing, I guess, where it's like a raw personality that will show itself negative in some aspects and positive in the others. So someone who is pays attention to detail, who has a drive to make things right, may get overly, in my opinion, offended about a lot of things, but they're also the people that are going to catch the criminal because they can't let things go, and they're going to dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. It's not easily satisfied, which is a good thing in the good context, but they're also, in the wrong context, you're offended by literally everything. Yeah. And you can't live your life that way.
Right.
And hopefully you marry someone who's somewhat the opposite and you guys can balance. Like, you know, there's a lot of things that I don't find a big deal that Laura does, and vice versa. And so we help each other to calm down, and we help each other to calm up. And we need to, right? So I do think there's a lot to do with personality.
So I wanted to jump in on, so we've defined reconciliation. We've defined what it means to forgive and be forgiven. Anytime you start talking about reconciliation, and I've had this happen because, you know, I post things on Facebook sometimes, and I've had responses like, if I post something about reconciliation and forgiveness, I mean, it almost without exception, and this is not a complaint, okay? I'm not complaining when I say this, but almost without exception, somebody will say you don't have to reconcile with abusers. Yeah. Okay. And I agree with that, okay, to an extent. Like you don't need to expect restored fellowship with an abuser, but you do not escape the need to forgive them. So I mean, so there absolutely has to be some kind of forgiveness that goes on.
I think because when you say fellowship, you have to define your terms, because I think about it in fellowship as far as I'm mentally okay with them and they're okay with me, but there's no physical proximity. Or fellowship is literally the fellowship hall, old school in the 90s, to where you're in the same room together.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't define fellowship outside of like interaction.
Right. So I could say we are in fellowship with that church over there, but we don't actually spend any time with them necessarily, but we do have a good relationship. We're on the same terms. So it's looser. Okay. So that's, I think, when people, which I think fellowship is probably more when you're just in proximity together, but when you have these conversations, I would be more vague or more loose with it. Like, I'm in fellowship with so-and-so.
I mean, I think that when we're talking about what the scripture says, I mean, it's mostly dealing with person-to-person stuff. and when we're
hanging out. You mean?
Yeah, like who are you? Who's in your closest circle? Who's in the next level out? Those circles of relationship.
Right.
And there is a circle of relationship. I forget who I was having this discussion with, but it was with my friend Jackson. I was on his podcast because we were dealing with the question of people who say they don't care what people think. They actually do. Or else they wouldn't be saying that out loud to everybody that they know.
Absolutely.
But there is a sphere of people, about 8 billion of them,
right,
who I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
Right. But once you cross, because I have no fellowship with them, I have no relationship with them. And when I say I don't care what they think, I mean that my actions and words and behaviors never crosses my mind to consider them, because I don't have a connection to them.
Sure.
But once you cross that threshold, even on the outer fringes of my life, where we might have some interaction, it's potential. I start to care.
Sure.
Sure.
And I think you do have to talk about, because if there's conflict in the church,
and it's not just me who cares. Everybody starts to care at that level.
Yeah. When there's conflict in the church and you have conflict with somebody, we are very quick to say, I forgive them, but I just don't have to like them. Or I forgive them, but I just don't have to talk to them at church anymore. Because I think this church, any church I've been a part of, I have heard of conflict between two or more people. Every single church, including this one. And so it's like, we just don't have to be friends. And I'm like, I think people are trying to say, I can do the heart thing without actually showing them kindness. Like, they just write off the whole situation extremely quickly.
Yeah.
To where I think that someone had said this, he won't care if I say it. It's him. Evan, friend, has said that like any two Christians ought to be able to be married to each other. Which is a very interesting, because we are about self-sacrifice. We are about putting others before us. And so that's what our life is about. Why does it matter who you're married to?
Any two
men
and women.
Men and women, yes. This is for New Harmony Church. We all look at our statement of faith, right?
Yeah.
So as far as, we're not talking about the extremes. If we talk about, you have been offended by someone and they seek forgiveness, and your hope ought to be, I can't wait for the flourishing that now will happen, not piecemeal, one morsel of bread at a time in the fellowship of a meal. Yeah. Which is super hard to do.
And back to that parable, I mean, we don't get any indication that the king and that servant were best pals before the offense happened. But we there was some kind of relationship, because the king had extended money to this servant.
Yes.
Okay. And so reconciliation in that situation wasn't that they became best pals again. It just, things went back to the way they were.
Right. And I think we can, because that parable is limited, I think, in that scope. When you look at the New Testament as a whole and how we are to forgive one another, outdo one another in love, that is a taking initiative toward each other.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I just say the bare minimum of reconciliation is going to restore things to the way that they were.
Bare minimum.
Yeah. Now, ideally, what happens is you actually have a better relationship, because you're not going to commit the same offense again.
And I've been there. Absolutely, I've been there. And I think that it's not just that God did the bare minimum with us. Now we don't have punishment. Now it's that you may have life in my name, that you may join the Godhead as far as the relational community of love and respect and awe. It's very much Paul talks about the riches of his glorious grace. Everything's according to, and there's a difference between according to a bank account of $5 versus $5 million. It's according to his riches. So these are opportunities for us to forgive each other and really pray for and seek for flourishing according to the riches of the gospel, really.
Yeah. So honestly, I think most of the time we fall short of that.
Yeah.
I mean, even our best.
Yeah. We're looking out for our own.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just examining my own journey in this, and maybe some people that I've witnessed and, walked through things with.
Yeah.
Even our best efforts sometimes fall short. I mean, because we have trouble I think we have trouble with the idea that this relationship should be better now than it once was. We can't forget, and I'm not. Hear me. I don't ever tell somebody, forgive and forget.
Yeah,
that's not really what the Bible teaches. Because if you forget, then you're doomed to repeat the same problem again. But you forgive with the intention of, we're not going to forget this because we don't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
Which goes into maybe something we'll discuss in a second about boundaries. But it's almost like you need to, in a metaphorical sense, lay a stone of remembrance like they do in the Old Testament. Say, we will never again let this become an issue in this relationship. And that's, I think that's biblical, because the same way that God never again lets sin, once we accept Christ as Savior and are forgiven, He'll never again let our sin come between us, and cause us to lose fellowship. Now, and then I know that there's people who disagree with that and say, yeah, but you can walk away. That's not a discussion I'm really talking about having right now. I don't agree with that statement, but we can have that one on a different podcast. But, we just fall short, though, because we I don't know. There's just this, it's the flesh. The big answer is it's the flesh.
Yeah.
And we're not crucifying the flesh daily, right, and really walking in the Spirit as we should. I'm not saying you're never walking in the Spirit. I'm just saying we're not walking in the Spirit as we should when we can't seem to get over this hump of it should be better than it used to be.
Yeah, I think walking your life without the Spirit on a daily basis, or very piecemeal kind of Christianity, it's going to be harder to forgive. I think if you are pursuing the Lord and praying for your family, praying for the church, praying for your people, when offenses arise, you are already living according to the Spirit. There's no wonder why it's so hard for a lot of us to forgive, because our Christianity is very much a Sunday morning thing, or it's not thought. We do not meditate much, so it's you get what you get. Or you sow, you reap what you sow.
Exactly.
So forgiveness, when people, I think there's offenses that are very small and very large, and that's reality. But at the same time, even within that spectrum, a life not devoted to glorifying God day in and day out is going to yield your heart to be very hard when it comes time to reconcile someone, because you are used to looking out for yourself. You're used to being in survival mode for what you need, or what you get, or what your family needs, versus the Christian life is about serving others. I can't wait to get to church and figure out who needs help. That's actually not how we think.
That's actually a really good rubric to use for gauging where you are on that spectrum. So if you have difficulty with this whole reconciling thing and forgiving thing, you have it's almost guaranteed, except in, again, extreme cases. It's almost guaranteed that you're a self monster. You're a me monster. That's what I'm going to say. A me monster. Always thinking about yourself.
We need to title this something self monster.
Because
you are a monster.
We are, and we have to kill that monster every day. Okay, so let's address maybe an elephant in the room here. What about the situations where the reconciliation and restored fellowship is not possible? And I think that there's room for that, because we're never going to tell an abused person to go make your relationship right with your abuser. Even Jesus, when he was pressed on divorce, he said, well, the law of Moses does make provision for a divorce, but he qualifies that. He said, but that's not how it was from the beginning.
Right.
In the beginning, it was one man, one woman, and so he said that that provision was made because of the hardness of your hearts. Okay. So the flesh and our fallen selves have created a situation where we can say that it's okay if there is no restored fellowship. There could be forgiveness extended, but we're not going to be eating dinner together, or maybe not even attending the same church or living in the same town.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on the severity of it.
Yeah.
And so we have to make room for that. But I said this to you on the drive to lunch today. I want to make room for that. But I also do not want to let people off the hook on the other end of things, where they can just constantly claim, I'm too damaged. But when the offense is nothing like what we're talking about here, so because our tendency with the flesh is to like give it as much room as it needs. We give the flesh all the leeway and room that it wants in order to breathe and feel comfortable. Reconciliation is a dying to yourself.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to absorb,
on both sides.
If there's forgiveness, it has to happen both ways. Especially, you're both absorbing the loss. So you're killing the flesh by doing this. And if you've reconciled with somebody, but you didn't die to yourself a little bit, you didn't reconcile with them. You just didn't.
I think a lot of people when we withhold forgiveness, or we make the boundaries the hallmark, would we all agree with boundaries are good and necessary per each situation. And you probably should not be on your own making your own boundaries. You probably need wisdom. Probably, I'm going to say probably again, 100% of the time. You just need guidance, because here's where you should be and you don't realize you're way up here, or here's where you should be and you're way down here.
Done enough.
Someone on the outside, a Christian brother or sister, needs to help you, hopefully older in the Christian faith, and just sees the situation clear. The offended and the offender need to seek counsel. And it's not about gossiping, because I think there is an attitude with gossiping. There is a intention of like, making someone else look terrible.
Tear down so you can look better.
Yeah, but if you are honestly, and that person will know, I think, because you have a relationship with that person. You and the church, because that's, me and you are the church working this out to where I offended this person. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
How do I go about it?
Can I call time out there?
Sure.
No. I'm going to. I have been in church long enough to witness the practice, not the practice, the sin of gossip weaponized.
Oh, 100, yes.
Weaponized to the point where you can't talk to anybody about your issue.
Yes.
You can't go seek counsel from a close friend, from a trusted mentor, or else you will be accused of gossip and slander, and that's unbiblical.
It's very unbiblical.
I mean, the Bible says there is wisdom in a multitude of counselors. That means that you are going to go talk to people about what is happening in your life. And if that means you got to air a little bit of the laundry in order to do that, then so be it. But it is all in the spirit of how it's shared.
Yes.
Now, of course, you need to be careful that the person you're talking with is not going to, go flap it around town.
Right. Can they actually help?
Yeah. And can they actually give me sound wisdom?
Right.
So, and that may be a good, litmus test. Is this gossip? Is it not? Well, is the person I'm talking to about it, can they actually help me?
Right. And do they have any opinions about the person that would sway you not to forgive?
Right.
They already
right. It's like, are they your yes person, or are they somebody who's actually going to challenge you on whether or not you're making the right decision or have the right thoughts about something? Now, that's not to say that you can't go to somebody and just process. Processing is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But we got to stop weaponizing gossip.
Yes.
Okay. And so when we say gossip and slander, we mean something very particular.
Right.
Where you are harming the reputation of the person that's being talked about in the eyes of others.
Right.
And so I understand that you go get counsel from somebody. In some ways, you can't avoid bringing some of the details of a situation out. So maybe the person that you're at odds with, maybe they will be lowered a little bit in that other person's eyes, but you're not malicious. You're gracious about it. I mean, as best you can be. You own up. I mean, you own up to what you did wrong,
Yeah.
or if you've done anything wrong. And sometimes we don't even have a good perspective on that. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we just don't see it.
Right.
But I had to say that because I'm sick of hearing people weaponize the issue of gossip.
Yeah.
Like, you can't talk about that with anybody. It's gossip.
Right.
No, you can.
Yeah, it's okay. And
There are avenues to do that.
I think when you have conflict, especially when it gets to a level to where the whole church has now sort of at least heard something about it, I think clarity is key.
Yes.
To where people will, especially when it comes to leadership, conflict in leadership, or a leader and someone else in the church, to where, I've been in a situation where the leadership had said, if you guys talk about this is sin. And I'm thinking to myself, well, those people over there in the church think one thing, those people over there think another, and I think one thing, and I know that because I've heard things, and like we're all
over the place.
We're going to fill in gaps what we don't know.
Yeah.
They have a piece, they have a piece, they have a piece. None of this makes sense. So
yeah.
Just weaponizing.
Which actually is why transparency in leadership is so crucial.
Be transparent.
Which we're trying to do that way better than as we continue.
And
to
I think a
minister.
lot of churches are doing that, because I think that was the status quo of churches, just to keep the church not from knowing, or sometimes I say double negatives. They keep the church from anything, from everything, to where I've seen, on YouTube, on the internet, churches like, here's where we're at, and be very frank with people. So, we all heard the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no, and you can rewind the tape, because it's just now we can all process together.
Yeah.
Some were privileged with information and some weren't. We just all know.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that, because I've been in a lot of church situations to where it's like, I guess the church just can't be trusted with anything at all. Just keep coming.
Yeah.
I hate it.
So, but okay, I kind of derailed us with that.
It was a good derailment, because I think a lot of people have baggage in their upbringing at church, and conflict is just something that hopefully never happens again, because it was handled so poorly, and we know conflict will happen again.
Yeah. So let's clarify our derailment one more time. That way we're not misunderstood. It is perfectly okay to find someone who will be helpful,
right,
and to discuss your situation with that person, as long as it's not in a mean-spirited way. It's not in a way to tear the other person down.
Yeah.
But you are seeking counsel on what you should do in this situation. You're not going to these people or this person and just airing it to make yourself feel better because you get it off your chest or whatever. Although there's room for processing, okay. But my advice and counsel is, if you got to process, do it with one person. Just find one person and process with them, and you know that their mouth is a steel trap. It ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
But in terms of the multitude of wisdom, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, though. You can absolutely go to people and get advice and kind of unpack the situation, but it has to be for that purpose of you're trying to do something good and beneficial for the situation, not just to unload and feel better about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Where were we at?
I think we're about idle or boundaries.
Yeah, because you brought up boundaries kind of in a passing way.
Yeah. I think it's sort of a boundaries are interesting, because some people make boundaries and then they don't live by the boundaries, and then it happens again. And other people have boundaries, and the whole reconcile process is just about the boundaries. Yeah. So you have to have wisdom even with boundaries, and I think a multitude of counsel.
Yeah.
I think that conflict needs help.
Yeah.
And hopefully you are in your Christian walk enough to where you know who to turn to when things happen. Like, I have several people I know that I could just help me right now with this.
Yeah.
But boundaries can be so just boundaries are a tool. And just like a hammer, there's a way to hit a nail and there's a way to hit a baby. And you only want to do one of those things.
Yeah.
Right? So boundaries can be very helpful and sort of a tool to make the
Oh man, that was a terrible visual.
Well, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I think because really it's relational, and so the tool should help the relationship.
Yeah.
not make the boundary into a god or into what the whole thing is about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I wrote down a question about can we make boundaries an idol, which I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes about the boundaries,
Right.
Instead of about the
yeah,
relationship.
but it's a really good tool. And
Yes.
boundaries are very helpful. And even
mean,
professional counselors will help you with those boundaries.
Yeah.
And you can talk out the way the other person is stepping outside of those boundaries and how to respond when that happens. Because you will make a boundary and the other person will do that.
Right. I mean,
Just smack it over. Now what?
Boundaries are healthy.
Yeah.
But in the reconciliation process, if all it is about is establishing boundaries,
Right.
then you're not really reconciling.
Right. And you can be condescending sometimes.
Condescending,
with
yeah.
boundaries.
Because if reconciliation, like we said, is about restoring fellowship, you don't build fellowship by building boundaries,
Yeah.
willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Okay. So some boundaries are good, but you've crossed a line, and I put this in my notes, boundaries are healthy, but they can also be used to keep everyone at bay so that you feel safe.
Right.
And that's not biblical either. Boundaries are to prevent harm, yes, but they're not to feed your flesh's need to feel secure and safe.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because life ain't safe.
And I think that's
and love and relationships, and I mean, it's all risk. I mean, if you want to, one way you can spell love is RISK. So if you're going to risk if you're going to love somebody, then you're risking harm.
Yeah.
You are absolutely risking harm.
Yeah.
And that's why betrayal from people you love hurts the most.
Right.
Because it has the highest cost.
Yeah. I agree.
So. So one last thing, and I think we'll probably have done our diligence here. What about situations where the other party refuses to reconcile? So I'll give you a scenario. You both come to the table of reconciliation. Okay, you both have this willingness to go through this, but at the end of the day, one party can't go all the way, and the other one wants to, and that's I'll just leave it at that because that's pretty. I don't want to get too nuanced about that, but just in some way or another, party A says I can't do this, I'm done. Party B wishes to continue pursuing. What do you do in those situations? If you're party B, what do you do?
Party B, kind of like Cardi B.
No, gosh. Dad jokes, never ending.
I'm on fire. I thought of this verse, which I think it's germane. Romans 12:18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Yes.
And so, I think that so much of Christianity is your walk with the Lord, in a sense, has nothing to do with anyone else's response, period. You just do what God has called you to do, over. With a caveat, it's a very important one, with wisdom.
Yeah.
So we tend to just want black and white rules and forget about the wisdom. There's a time and a place for the right rule. The right rule can be done in the wrong way or the wrong time. So I think that, and this happens a lot with marriages, I think, that, she won't accept this, or he won't care, or all this kind of stuff. It's like, you just do what God has called you to do and leave the response to God, which is super hard, and a lot of fear is in that, because we do want, and that's why it's so hard. Rejection is very hard. That's why it's so hard for a lot of guys, including me, to ask, the girl out. I don't want rejection.
I did it once, and it worked.
I hate rejection. So, and this makes me think of, the book When People Are Big and God is Small. And we have a big view of God, meaning we're thinking about God all the time, and we understand love and obedience to Him. It's helpful to have perspective.
Yeah.
right? And that's where the godly wisdom comes in, because we have some older people, seasoned people in our church that have been there, done that, where I'm the fish in water. I don't know that I'm in water, to where someone else is like, yeah, I've already been there before. I know exactly what you're going through, and you need that outside perspective. And I personally have talked to other people about, it's not about their response. Now, there's a way in which you need to offer forgiveness or ask forgiveness, whatever your side is. It's not that you don't care about how they respond, because you desperately want them to really hear your heart. And that's hard. Yeah. To get the words down. And some people need to write it down, and some people don't need to write it down. Right. But our goal is, I want you to hear my intentions. I want you to hear that I'm so sorry. And just knowing that they may say, I just can't forgive you yet. As far as it depends, because it reminds me of David and his sin against Bathsheba. He goes, to you and you only have I sinned. It doesn't mean he didn't sin horizontally, but ultimately he sinned against God. Yeah. And so I think that once you are grieving in your heart and you're repentant, God knows that, and then you go to the people, that they have to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling. You're doing it on your own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full disclosure, I'm not alone in this. I think we all have relationships in our life that didn't reconcile the way you hoped they would. I mean, we have even family that, I mean, I guess estranged would be the correct word. It's not because we didn't try to reconcile, but there just wasn't a meeting of the. Yeah, I mean, there just wasn't a meeting of the minds, so to speak, or hearts. Yeah, that was equal in that situation, and so it just didn't work out, you know. And I to this day, I hope and pray for that to be restored to what to something proper and good. But there's just things that haven't happened. Yeah. That we feel needs to happen before we can continue and I guess at this point restart the relationship. And so so again we lay down a boundary. Yeah. Right. And it's not a bad boundary. It's a boundary that has been laid down that prevents further harm from happening. It's not meant to keep. It's not meant to shield us from every harm possible, okay? It's just there to this one thing. We're going to put this boundary down and say, well, we love you, yeah, but here's what needs to happen, because we've done our part. We've owned our side of the offense, okay? I mean, we owned it, we admitted it, we asked for forgiveness, truly meant it, But on the other side of it, the offense that happened on the other side, they're not ready to own their side of it, Yeah. And I don't know if they ever will be, but that has created a situation where, okay, I mean, we love you, but this has to, we have to have some, this has to be two-sided. It's a two-way street. We forgive, you forgive, or we ask for forgiveness, you ask for forgiveness, because there was wrongs on both sides. Yeah. Sometimes people don't see what they did as wrong, and that becomes a real sticky situation because when you get into the realm of hurt and feelings and how people receive things and how people give things and I mean, certainly, no intention to harm, but sometimes you end up harming anyways. Oh, yeah. Which I guess I want to add one more thing onto our podcast, because this is one we said earlier when we were talking about this. What is there a right way to, or in a wrong way, or a wrong way to ask for forgiveness, or to, I guess to humble yourself. You don't think you were wrong, but they feel incredibly wronged about something. Do you just kind of take it on the chin and we're not talking about things that are black and white, like 2 + 2 is 4. I mean, the answer is always 4.
Yeah.
Okay. No one has been murdered or stole against. I mean, no commandment has been broken per se, that we can point, you did this. It's objectively wrong. We're in the realm of feelings and emotions and, that kind of stuff.
That stuff, you need like a mediator, I think. You need a third party or a friend or a counselor to like, okay, you guys are doing this, talking past each other. You can't see my hands if you're just listening to this. But I think when it gets complicated, I feel like I understand exactly what you're saying, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. And then you're going to feel the exact same way. So obviously we're missing each other. You need someone to say, okay, here's where you're missing it. Oh, I didn't understand that. Yeah, I've been telling you every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it. I just didn't understand it. Because I do have a filter. Laura or somebody's talking to me, I have a filter.
Everybody's got one.
I'm going to define terms my own way, and not until 2 hours later do I understand. I don't understand why I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Or when they, down the road, when they say that one thing that triggers it, and you go, I didn't even consider this because this sentence means this to me. But now I understand that sentence. I can see how you got there. It didn't even occur to me as an option before.
Yeah.
But we are almost at an hour.
Yeah. I mean, we're close. I would say maybe to answer the question is when you are asking forgiveness, you should not accompany that with a justification for what you did. You ask somebody for forgiveness, but you can't say, but it really made me angry. And so justifying why I lashed out. No, you just ask for forgiveness, period.
Yeah.
Don't justify, don't add, don't bring any add-ons.
Yeah,
because you can't do that before God. So you shouldn't be doing that before people. And so don't bring your reasons for why you lost it or why you did what you did. Just bring the reality that you acknowledge that what you did was harmful and hurt so and so. And I get that we live in a culture where everybody's hurt by everything. I mean, I get that, and sometimes sometimes you can't give into that spirit either. Okay, but there are legitimate cases where somebody lashed out, in anger over a mistake, over something that was unintended, and apologies were made on this end for like the mistake, but there's never an apology offered for the lashing. Both need an apology.
Yeah.
And so that's but when you apologize, you can't say I did this, but this is why I did it. You just apologize.
Yeah.
Because and it's healthy for you to do it that way. Healthy for me and you to do it that way. Everybody, because you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
You're denying yourself. You are killing a little bit more of the flesh that feels like it is owed a pound.
Yeah.
It needs to get its little dig in there so it feels just a little bit better. No, you are killing the flesh in that situation. So, okay, that's all I have to say about that. Good. So, I think we have did our diligence, man.
Yeah, I think it's good.
So, hope that was helpful.
Wait. Then the person comes up to play piano.
That's in church, man. We have no piano here. And now you gave away the cymbal. Now we got to come up with a new one. So, hey, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please talk to us. You guys have our numbers. You have our emails. If you attend our church, text us questions, comments. Leave them on Facebook, on the church page, however you want to do that. If you're friends with us on Facebook just as friends, do it there. It doesn't matter. So, but we want to hear from you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.